All right, today I'm going to take you through a list of 5 people that signed with the UFC and became UFC champions almost overnight. To become a UFC champion is one of the greatest achievements in all of combat sports. And for some people, it's a long and winding path, okay? It's a path filled with lots of ups and many, many downs, okay? Some people have to scratch and claw their way to the top. Other people breeze through it with no problem whatsoever. For example, Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor became a 2-weight champion, knocking out everybody along the way. But he isn't even on this list. He is not one of the top 5 quickest that we'll see. Okay, Conor McGregor did it easily, but it took him 6 fights. I, on the other hand, it took me 27 fights. I lost both my knees 1 eye later, and a good few brain cells. I finally did it. But 27 fights, Conor took 6, and now I'm going to take you through 5 people that did it in record time. Number 5, Brock Lesnar. Of course, Brock Lesnar had to be on this list. If you know your UFC history, then you know Brock Lesnar made it look somewhat easy. Granted, he lost his UFC debut at UFC 81 to Frank Mir. But we got to remember, that was only his 2nd ever mixed martial arts contest. It's crazy to think that he was fighting at such a high level. Yes, he was submitted by a knee bar in the very first round, but he did get back to winning ways. In his 3rd ever fight, he went up against Heath Herring, went to a decision at UFC 87.
Can you see me now? Can you see me now?
And then, in his very next fight, in just 3 fights in the UFC, he went up against Randy the Natural Couture at UFC 91 and knocked him out in the 2nd round. And for Brock Lesnar, in terms of how many days that was, from signing with the UFC to becoming champion of the world, 287 days. As we know, Brock Lesnar then went on to defend the belt against Frank Mir, got revenge, finished him in the 2nd round at UFC 100. Then he told the world, look, listen, I'm here to drink Coors Light and go home and jump on my girl, because Bud Light won't pay me. Something like that.
I'm going to go home tonight. I'm going to drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing. And hell, I might even get on top of my wife tonight.
Defended against Frank Mir, then defended again against Shane Carwin in a phenomenal performance, and then lost his belt on the UFC's debut on Big Fox against Cain Velasquez at UFC 121. Number 4, Holly Holm. Holly Holm came to the UFC with a fierce reputation from the boxing world. In the boxing world, she was already a world champion, so she was brought over to the UFC, and she was already pegged straight away as a potential competitor for the one and only Ronda Rousey. And as soon as she signed with the UFC, she started taking on very tough competition. Her first fight was against Raquel Pennington. She got the job done via split decision. And remember, Raquel Rocky Pennington is currently the bantamweight champion. After that, it was Marion Renault, another decision. And then she got the shot against Ronda Rousey in just 3 fights in the head kick heard all around the world. UFC 193, Melbourne, Australia, a beautiful knockout, unbelievable, shocked the world. So then in just 3 fights or 261 days of Holly Holm signing with the promotion, she was now champion of the world. Number 3, we're staying with the ladies again. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, the queen of violence, the strawweight queen. This woman is absolutely phenomenal, and she was such a fierce fighter back in the day. Well, listen, she ran through everybody. The boxing was always on point. It was absolutely beautiful, and she was mean. Right from the very get-go, she was getting in people's faces. She was talking shit. And for a while there, she was Dana White's favourite fighter. And for Joanna Jędrzejczyk, 3 fights is all it took. So Joanna made her debut in July 2014 against Juliana Lima. Got the job done via decision. Then she comes back, she fights Claudia Gadelha. Beats her by split decision. And Claudia Gadelha, by the way, very, very good fighter. One of the best female fighters to never become the champion. And then after that, in just 3 fights, she gets a shot against Carla Esparza, the Cookie Monster. And she goes out there, Dallas, Texas, and puts on one hell of a beatdown. Carla Esparza is a great girl. She's very nice. She's sweet. She's awesome. She's a good wrestler. She's a great champion. But she was no match for Joanna Jędrzejczyk that night. UFC 185, Joanna Jędrzejczyk went out there and just wiped the floor with her and became the champion in 3 fights, or, according to my notes, 231 days. Number 2, the one and only Quinton Rampage Jackson. The UFC wanted to sign Quinton Jackson for quite some time. The man was an absolute rock star over in Japan. Some of the performances that he had in Pride were phenomenal. When he fought Ricardo Arona, he was caught in a triangle. He picked him up high above his head and then slammed him down and knocked him out unconscious. Yes, he had some ups and downs. He never became the Pride champion, but the star power was undeniable. From the ring walks to the celebrations to the howling, you put it all together, Quinton Rampage Jackson was a star. And the champion of the UFC at that time was Chuck the Iceman Liddell. Well, Quinton Jackson had already beat him, had already knocked him out in Pride in November 2003. Dana White brought a few guys over from the UFC to fight in Pride, and it didn't really go well. Now, maybe that's because they were all on performance-enhancing drugs.
All you motherfuckers are on steroids.
I'm not saying Quinton Jackson was. I'm saying that is what generally people think. And when a lot of Pride fighters ended up coming over to the UFC when they were bought, it didn't pan out too well. But it did pan out very, very good for Quinton Rampage Jackson, an old training partner of mine, and we shared some amazing memories. Quinton Rampage Jackson, a fantastic human being, signed with the UFC against Marvin Eastman, got the job done in round 2, and then he went up against Chuck Liddell, UFC 71, Las Vegas, Nevada. And what did he do? He knocked the Iceman out cold, okay? Put him on ice. Chuck Liddell led to the body, and that was it. That was all Quinton Jackson needed. Boom! Vicious right hand, sat him down. That was it. Knocked him out cold. And Quinton Rampage Jackson became an absolute megastar. Number 1. Yes, you guessed it. Of course, this man had to top this list. This man has had some of the quickest knockouts, the quickest finishes, the most unbelievable, inspiring finishes. He snatched victory from the jaws of defeat on a couple of occasions. I am, of course, talking about Anderson the Spider Silva, a man that is an absolute legend. A man that's one of my favourite fighters. He inspired me. He inspired many fighters all over the world. And he became the UFC champion in the quickest time ever. He took the piss. He did it so quick. He signed with the UFC at UFC Fight Night 5, June 2008. I was there, ringside. I just won the Ultimate Fighter Season 3 2 days earlier. I'm sitting there ringside and I knew all about Anderson Silva. I fought with him on Cage Rage when he had some amazing performances there, when he knocked out people like Jorge Rivera, Curtis Stout, okay? He'd had some amazing performances in Japan as well. And Chris Lieben underestimated him.
He's going to leave his chin hanging out there, and I'm going to break his jaw.
Chris Lieben said, yeah, this guy's used to fighting easier competition in Japan.
After he gets in there with me and I knock him out, he may want to go back to Japan or somewhere where the competition's a little easier.
Well, I'm going to show him that in the good old US of A, he ain't going to have success. Well, guess what? That bit him in the ass, because in just 49 seconds, Anderson Silva showed the world what he was capable of. Went out there and just destroyed Chris Lieben. So, what was next? Well, Rich Franklin, he was the middleweight champion. He was the face of the UFC. The man was a school teacher by day and a badass by night. So he was the perfect fit for the UFC because they were trying to break into the mainstream back then. Well, break into his face. That's what Anderson Silva did. Took the tie clinch and just destroyed him with beautiful tie knees. Knocked out Rich Franklin. Then he did Travis Lutter, then Nate Marquardt, then a rematch with Rich Franklin, Dan Henderson, James Irvin, Patrick Cote, Talis Laitis, Forrest Griffin, Damian Maia, Chael Sonnen, Vitor Belfort, Yushin Okami, Chael Sonnen, Stephen Bonner, Chris Weidman, Nick Diaz, and then good old Mikey B, Michael Bisping. Anyway, there you go. 5 fighters, the top 5 that made it look easy, that sailed through it, that breezed through the absolute top. Okay, became champion with almost no competition. As I say, I took the long path. I took the hard path. It wasn't easy for me, and it wasn't easy for a lot of people. But these 5 people here, it was kind of easy for them. Not because they were gifted it, because they were special. What do you think about the list? Subscribe, ring the bell, and thank you for watching.